Hello and welcome back to the Healthy Practice from Right Up. I'm your host Ellie. I'm so glad to have you here with us today. In today's episode, we're exploring the potential of exercise to combat the mental health epidemic. With the rise of prescribed exercise and more awareness about mind-body connection, there are many ways that you could incorporate exercise into both your therapy practice and your own daily routine. To discuss this holistic approach, I was delighted to be joined by psychotherapist Kevin Braddock, co-founder of Soma Space. Soma Space is an innovative not-for-profit that incorporates strength training and exercise with mental health education. This was such a thoughtful episode and really opened my eyes up to exciting developments in mental health care and the importance of treating people in the bodies that they exist in. I really hope you enjoy the episode. So welcome to the Healthy Practice, Kevin. Thank you so much for being here. Could you give us a little background to you, yourself, and how you formed Soma Space?
Yeah, hi Ellie. Yes, my name's Kevin Braddock. I'm a psychotherapist and a fitness instructor. I used to be a journalist, writer, and I set up the Soma Space here in Oswald Street in Shropshire with my business partner Jo Hazel Watkins, she's a personal trainer specializing in weightlifting for trauma recovery, which is a thing these days. We've been open for about a year. We were running kind of movement for mental health sessions start of last year, and this is kind of the latest phase in a project. Joe and I have been friends for 5 or 6 years, and we'd often been thinking about the links between mental health, mental illness, and exercise, what exercise can do for people who are struggling with mental health or recovering from mental illness. So we're based in a small town in Shropshire, which is where I grew up. We specialize in small group trainings, 4 or 5 people plus do one-to-one work with clients, either fitness instruction, personal training, or psychotherapy.
Oh, great. Okay. And so do you combine those? So you combine the psychotherapy with the physical training?
What we do is we program exercise for the benefit of mood. So there's lots of research says, in fact, I think everybody these days knows that exercise is one of the best things you can do for your mental health. The question is for people how they might start doing that. They might start doing something. Going to a gym can often be a bit of a lonely, even anxiety inducing experience. So what we do is we created a space which is, let's say, founded on psychotherapeutic principles, confidentiality, boundaries, a place where people can come and, should they wish to, open up about what's going on in their lives, plus do some exercise for the benefit of mental health, and particularly thinking about mood. We often program things for, let's say, a rise in mood. If someone's feeling very anxious, it might be that boxercise really helps them. And strength training, in other
Mm.
words, with lifting weights is, it's pretty well established that, of course, it makes people feel strong, and there's quite a lot involved in it. People may never have done it before, so we're very facilitative. We're trying to give people experiences where they can do something they might not have done before that has a positive effect both physically and mentally. In the Soma Space,
Mm.
I also practice psychotherapy one-to-one, let's say traditional talk therapy with people in there. So it's a room in a kind of civic building. We ran a crowdfunder last year to refurb it, to equip it. So it's a multi-functional space. And it works in lots of different ways, really. I mean, I think that the fundamental thing is perhaps a good way to think about the Soma Space is it's like a gym for people who don't think they're the kind of people that go to the gym. And I think there's
Yeah,
quite a few of
yeah.
those people around. And we're
Well, I'm one
very,
of them, yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot to say about, let's say, traditional high street gym strength fitness culture, which can be,
Mm.
it's a great thing, but it can be very, let's say, difficult for people to access. So thinking about a space where there's no mirrors, we don't have any kind of banging music. It's not about getting six packs or getting ripped or losing weight. A lot of the things that, let's say, the fitness industry has traditionally sold itself on, which are all perfectly valid things if people want to do that. But let's say a space that's more community minded, It's more to do with approaching clients as whole people rather than simply bodies that either want to lose weight or get huge guns or biceps or
Mm.
get ripped, let's say, which
Hmm.
that's not really our thing.
Yeah. What made you take such a big career change?
My history is I was a journalist for a long time, working for lifestyle magazines principally, things like GQ and Esquire, the men's magazines. But it always had a long history of depression, particularly going back to when I was in my early 20s. And then about 10 years ago, I had a big breakdown and then started writing about mental health, mental illness, recovery, started learning a lot more, wrote a couple of books. And then about 6 years ago, Jo and I met. She was working for a mental health, a sort of a kind of mental health community project here in Oswestry. Jo has a similar history,
Mm.
diagnosis of PTSD. And what we found was that I'd always been really into running, and just found that running was it's the exercise is the best natural antidepressant, I think. And Jo had at the time discovered strength training. She'd been through a very difficult patch, discovered strength training, and then trained as a personal trainer. And we were just talking a lot about how can we about our experiences. So I suppose we come from a place of lived experience and thinking, how can we use what we know to help other people? And in the intervening few years, I retrained as a therapist, psychodynamic psychotherapy in Goldsmiths, which is where I did my first degree. I graduated in 1994, which I believe quite a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like it now.
Yeah, and also trained as a fitness instructor and a boxercise coach. And yeah, I mean, I think that we're at a place where in society, particularly, I think this accelerated during COVID, but I think for quite some time before that, there's been such a rise in simple terms, mental health awareness and people understanding that mental health is a thing, mental illness is a thing, and I think both of us would think we want to do something purposeful and community based and put into practice both what we've experienced plus what we know and what we've learned and find ways to help other people.
Mhm. I've seen you talk about the psychic dimension of well-being. Can
Mm.
you explain what you mean by that, and how do you embody that in your work at Soma Space?
Yeah, what we mean by that is that if you look at principally two professions, personal trainers on the one hand, whose job is nominally to help people get fit or strong or whatever, and then you have on the other side therapists, people like me, whose job is to construct a space where people can talk about their experiences and achieve some form of mental health or recover from mental illness. So I've been in therapy a long time, and it's a very powerful process, as is working with the body. But what seems to get missed is that certainly talk therapy tends to ignore the fact that we're bodies as well as minds and voices. And
Hmm.
personal
Hmm.
training, gym culture tends to overemphasize the body. One of it's Joe's phrase actually, that there's always a person in the body, and our aim is to work with the person who experiences themselves. So what we're combining really is a competency from Joe's side and a competency from my side with an overlap. And it's great to exercise. You feel better. I mean, all the science is there. You endorphin rushes and this, that, and the other. And but I sort of, certainly my experience of going to gyms or being, I used to do triathlon racing sort of 15 years ago, and I kind of thought it's great being this fit, strong body, but there's all this other stuff going on. Why am I so depressed? I need to speak to a therapist about it. And I think that there's a bit of a gap between the two. So what we think about is well-being is a very holistic thing. It means that, and I think more and more science is understanding that mind and body aren't two separate things. They're interconnected in all sorts of ways, and things that, let's say talking therapy, it risks disembodying people. Whereas to move your body to become a body again. And it doesn't, another principle of ours is it doesn't really matter how, strength training or martial arts or yoga and Tai Chi, things like that are very, very good at this, I think. And you become a body, you understand yourself, you experience yourself as a body, and to create this space in which people can do, in simple terms, do that, where they feel safe to do that, that's a very important thing. So I think that, as I said, psychotherapy is great, but it's two people sitting in chairs thinking about what they're talking about. And exercise is often, and I think men are perhaps a bit more guilty of this, just kind of hammering themselves as a body, lifting heavier and running faster, or all those things. But something is always at work at the level of the body, and it interacts with the mind. This is what we, the psyche. It's a rather technical word, but we just mean the mind, really. That's complex, and I think that certainly practices like, if you read into practices like yoga and Tai Chi, there's hundreds of years of thinking about this. And in a sense, some of those practices understood this a long time ago. And it seems to me that we're only just rediscovering it. And certainly within something like trauma recovery from PTSD. I'm sure you're familiar with The Body Keeps the Score, Bessel van der Kolk, that came out 6 or 7 years ago, I think. Amazing, incredible book. And his argument is that trauma lodges in the body, and which means that part of the recovery mechanism will be using the body itself in conjunction with, orthodox methods of helping people to heal, talk therapy, group therapy, that kind of thing.
I've been practicing some qigong recently, which is kind of what you're talking about, I think. So that's really nice. It's kind of a mind-body exercise, and I've been really enjoying that. Not to the same level, obviously, but just a weekly qigong class has been really nice for me to be in my body as well as helping my mind. How do you decide if someone is a good fit for Soma Space?
I think if they're the kind of people who don't think they're the kind of people who go to gyms, as I said before, I mean, I think what we have is what we've been working on is a referral system. So we're in contact with, we're in this small town called Oswestry in Shropshire, and we're in contact with social prescribers and GP surgeries and other community organisations who often say to us, we think this person might be good for what you do here. A lot of people have found us through social media and just our sort of general network. I think what it is that if it's someone who is looking to do something for themselves that's beyond, let's say, the typical goals of gym use, I want to, again, lose weight or feel stronger or fitter, those are all very valid goals. But if there's someone who would feel uncomfortable going into a traditional gym, and so we've worked on a system where there's a number of, let's say, questionnaires. We like to assess people, to invite them to come in and to talk to us about their lives and what's going on and how might exercise and movement, and plus also possibly therapy at the same time, benefit them. It's not suitable for everyone. I don't think any single modality will ever be, the thing that is perfect for everyone. But I think it's, fundamentally, it's the same thing that applies with psychotherapy, which is that if people are distressed to the point where they feel that they need to ask for help for someone, and then to discover what might help them. It might be more exercise, it might be talk therapy, it might be both, it might be something entirely different. But I think that, one thing that's been very successful is we run a group for young LGBTQ people in the space, and some of those will have, let's say, diagnoses or they may have histories that we hear about, and that's a very interesting, let's say, organic group which has kind of formed itself. Our thing is to offer a safe space for them and to offer them a place where they can come and do strength training, and they seem to really, really value it. And out of that, we've just finished a program with British weightlifting. We sort of grew out of that group, 10-week progression program, and some of the young people are lifting extraordinary deadlifts and back squats, and it's been great to see. And there's something about, in very simple terms, about growth in confidence, self-esteem, surprising oneself is a big part of this. I think again, people who have never done any boxing, for instance, have never punched some pads, and they discover that actually it's really fun, and they feel they can let something go or release something. So yeah, I mean that's how we. I think if somebody just wants to get massive arms or a wonderful six packs to show off on Instagram, I don't think they'd come to us anyway. That makes sense.
No. Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. And you said you take referrals. Do you take NHS referrals?
What we do at the moment is we've part of our business model is that we people pay for the services. We have a series of open classes every week that people can come to, and we also seek funding. So we've had some funding this year, particularly from British Weightlifting, which will enable us to offer this to people who can't afford. You wouldn't be able to afford. They may be on low income or no income. You wouldn't be able to afford coming to a facility such as ours. We're not at present in any NHS referral system, but we're in contact with local clinicians and staff who know about what we're doing and see the benefit of it. I think that, I mean, at the level of the NHS, it's not really my place to comment, but certainly, the NHS guidelines say exercise is good for your physical health. Everybody knows that, but it's also very good for your mental health. So we rely on a funding model alongside a payment subscription model to keep the business going. We're only, let's say, 18 months into it. We're the CIC, Community Interest Company, set up for the purposes of serving the community.
Does anything frustrate you about the common current treatments and approaches to mental health and well-being? Do you think we're getting anything wrong?
It's a very good question. One thing I know that she's written publicly about this, is about her own experience when she was very ill 6 or 7 years ago. I think she discovered strength training almost by accident. She's joined a gym, discovered that she really liked it, and then became one of their trainers. And Joe's argument, and I agree with this, which is that exercise isn't very well prescribed. And I think that it's about how it's done, let's say, and it's probably not the NHS's job to tell people to go running, or to facilitate them to do that. I don't really know. Again, as I said, it's not really my place to comment, but I certainly think that all of the academic research, all of the anecdotal evidence says that if people exercise, they feel better about themselves, and there's all manner of benefits and advantages to it. You sleep better, your digestion improves. So there's so many that they're probably not even worth mentioning. But I think that in some of the research or the literature, commonly available literature, there's some very good books. Kelly McGonigal, The Joy of Movement, Laura Kudari, Lifting Heavy Things. These are books that all argue for the benefit of exercise, particularly on mental health or on holistic health. So I think there's a lot to learn. I suppose again, I come at this from the point of view of a therapist and thinking, well, in my personal life, I know that therapy and exercises have been the combination, the kind of golden combination that's kept me on the straight and narrow, let's say, or improved the quality of my life. I mean, I don't think I'd last very long if I couldn't exercise, or I know I'd be very depressed, let's say. It's as simple as that. And
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm really interested in the combined sessions of personal training and psychotherapy. So what does a typical session consist of? What would you do if somebody was coming to one of your sessions?
We have run exercise sessions that begin with a check-in, a group of people, and again, imagining that, or not imagining, but beginning from a group of people who don't necessarily think of themselves as people who go to a gym. So there may well be immediately all manner of anxieties about what am I going to do in this space? Who are these other people? Are they looking at me? Oh my God, I feel terrible about myself. So on and so forth. We've run sessions in which we invite people in. There's a check-in. We have a series of protocols. This is a group setting, a series of protocols, trust agreements, really, trust, respect, confidentiality that we That's how we operate the group, let's say, plus a sharing protocol. If people would like to share, and they often do, about something
Mm.
that's going on, how they're feeling, what's going on in their life, then only should share so far as they feel comfortable to, plus as far as they feel that others would be comfortable to hear it. And we'll often use a piece of reading, Body Keeps the Score, something that we found that let's say addresses some aspect of human life, the difficulties of human life, reflect on that a bit, do some exercise, and then have a reflective moment at the end when we invite people to check out and make sure they're okay and they're safe and they feel held and so on. So in a sense, it's a bit like running a group therapy session and
Mm.
working 2-to-1 with people. We may have clients who come in, and a lot of the session will be them just wishing to talk, and the exercise, any exercise that's done, is something of an afterthought. So the importance there is about the space and about the, let's say, the psychotherapeutic holding, where people know that they can, if they wish to, speak about something, but it's confidential. It doesn't go any further. It would only ever go further with the supervisors we work with.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, because we have a lot of mental health therapists that listen to this podcast, and I know they'll be interested to know, did you come up with any challenges when you established Soma Space? So, and what I mean by that is, did you need any licenses, any extra training, anything that would allow you to prescribe strength training, physical exercise alongside the mental health offering?
Well, therapists don't. I certainly wouldn't prescribe anything. I don't think it's a therapist's job to prescribe anything. It's the therapist's job to discover what might help the client.
Yeah.
Certainly, uh, obviously, a therapist would need a therapist training, accreditation, qualification, supervision, insurance, DBS check, all of the requirements. I mean, as far as I know, there are some therapists who do this without all that stuff, but to be recognised in the first place by something like the BACP, which I'm a member of, and then also with physical work, I'm a what's called a fitness instructor. Joe is that's level 2. Joe is a level 3 personal trainer. So I'm qualified to work in group
Right.
settings. Some add-ons to that have been boxercise instructor and Tai Chi instructor. So I'm qualified to instruct those things. And I do think this is all principally about ethics and doing no harm. That's where all of this stuff needs to begin from. And some of these courses and qualifications are very rewarding to do. And I think my argument to therapists would be, if someone is already interested in, the somatic dimension of life, being a body as well as being a mind, then pursuing some of these trainings is really, really worth it. And to be able to work that way with people, I mean, fundamentally, I think there's a huge gap between fitness industry here and psychotherapy counseling here, and working in the middle is for us the interesting area. And I think there's a lot to be. There's a huge potential there. We're not the only people doing this. There's a guy in London, Andy Keefe, we talk to, who's very much in this area, getting people moving. It may be the case that simply someone lifting some weights or hitting some pads or swinging a kettlebell around is, in a sense, the therapy for them, because certainly when that happens, people do discover something about who they are, what's going on. They might
Mm.
enjoy the feeling of strength. They might enjoy playing with it. They might enjoy the feeling of flow that they get from Tai Chi or Qigong practices. One of your experiences, Ellie.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I think it will definitely plant a seed in some of our listeners' minds on how to combine the two, perhaps. So you'll be familiar with the busy schedule and stress that a lot of our listeners are under. So, what advice would you give to somebody who's really time constrained? They can't seem to feasibly set aside an hour for exercise each day. How can they get the most out of movement in their daily routine as a private practitioner, do you think?
The answer to this, I think, is find what you love and do more of it. It's as simple as that. And I think that one is a practitioner or a civilian, let's say, it, you know, exercise is really is about finding the thing that you notice something changing when you do it, and then doing more of it. That's the thing. And finding, I think once you've found that, you'll find the time.
Yeah, it'll be easier to fit it in because you want to do it instead of it being another sort of tick box or a chore to do, won't it?
Exactly.
So what are the benefits of regular exercise at different levels, or do the benefits change? So what I'm meaning here is running versus yoga, or like walking versus strength training. Are there different benefits for those?
Yeah, there are different benefits. Where Joe operates is a very specific area, which is using weightlifting as a mechanism for recovery from PTSD. There's an organization in Boston, they're part of the Bessel van der Kolk world. They've started publishing their research about this. It's peer-reviewed academic stuff, and it says that lifting heavy weights can help people recover from the symptoms of PTSD. So I think that's a very
Hmm.
strict example of something. Let's say clients who may have been subject to domestic violence or sexual assault or all sorts of other different things, something seems to get trapped in their body, and lifting heavy weights and having that kind of grunt thing, it can be very, very beneficial, provided it's facilitated in such a way that's safe and it's not rushing people and it's not re-traumatizing them. Um, it's what they call the somatopsychic principle, which is psychosomatic the other way around, which is if you feel stronger in your body, studies tend to show that you feel stronger psychically, you feel stronger in your holistic self, let's say. So this is what we see this every day. A client came in 4 or 5 months ago. She did a 20 kilogram deadlift, which is, big heavy bar. That was as much as she could do. The other day she lifted 95 kilograms. She trained for it, and it's quite extraordinary to see. And the effects on her, fundamentally, she feels transformed. She feels she's surprised herself, because, of course, people come to these things thinking, "Oh, I can't do that. I'm not one of these big beefy people that does weightlifting or boxing," because there is a certain image attached to those sports. And again, I think I just return this to finding any form of movement that you enjoy doing. And I think that I know that running really works for me, and it's something I've done for a long time. And same principle applies. Someone who's never run before, like Couch to 5K, I think is a brilliant initiative. It's a great idea, and it works for me. It might not work for someone else. Yoga completely works for some people. And I think that it might be dancing or ping pong or, trapeze artistry or pole dancing. Any of those things are about embodying the self, using the body as an energetic moving mechanism. And I mean, follow your heart with it, I think, is the thing. And of course, I'm sure we could quote statistics about changes in heart rate or metabolic rate, or I'm sure there's lots of very interesting medical science about it, which is great. But I think for people to discover something about certain forms of movement that seem to do something for them at various different levels is the thing. I mean, any exercise that raises your heart rate is good. Any exercise that puts
Hmm.
load on the body, certainly for older clients, I think it's after the late 40s, muscle and bone density decreases. Strength training that's when it has a very, very positive application. So I feel like I'm not really answering this very well, Ellie, but perhaps talking around it a little bit.
No, you have answered it well. I mean, the benefits basically are, whatever you enjoy, you're going to get benefits from, and it's better than doing nothing, isn't it? So guess it is. It's finding whether you like that slower pace of exercise, or that faster, running versus yoga kind of thing. Whichever you enjoy, you're going to get the benefits from, aren't you? So, um, on the flip side, then, are there any dangers of overdoing it when it comes to exercise, and what warning signs do we need to look out for if we are overdoing it, if there are any?
There certainly are, and it's something I know from experience. As I said, I used to compete in triathlon races about 15 years ago, and it was very good for me as a kind of obsessional neurotic who wants to control everything, a perfectionist, because I'd have a spreadsheet of all the swims and runs and bike rides that I needed to do. And of course, if was ill for a week, I got a cold, then I'd be panicking and going out of my mind because I felt like a complete failure. my body was saying something
Yeah.
to me. It was saying, "Stop! You're doing too much." And I think that's for people to be mindful and kind with themselves about how they're exercising. Again, there's a mentality that if that this no pain no gain mentality. There's something to be said for it, but we have had to say to people, okay, you stop. You're lifting too much or too regularly, or have you thought about how you could relax and allow yourself to recover if you've had an injury, like a sports injury, let's say. And I think also if they feel like they're failing at something, maybe they've set themselves a goal to lift a certain weight, and if they feel like they're failing at that, then the wise thing to do is to step away from it for a bit. And all of exercise, I mean, I think this is the kind of myth that all of the big sports brands sell, is that through exercise you can transform yourself into an Olympian or some sort of super being, which is, it's a lovely idea. Believe me, I've tried and it didn't work.
Yeah, never going to happen. No.
And I've sort of accepted I've accepted my limitations in that respect, and that's something that makes it much easier. So I think that, remembering why one is doing it. I want to do this because it makes me feel good and I understand myself better. I think those are the things to stay with. But also, if someone is just constantly exhausted, yet also feeling that they're not doing enough, that's the point at which it can become, I wouldn't say abusive, but certainly not beneficial and perhaps even detrimental.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Hi there, maybe you're listening to this on your lunch break or in between client sessions, and this is just a gentle reminder to get out for a walk today, to take that time for yourself and get back in touch with your body during a busy day. WriteUp is a powerful practice management software that integrates seamlessly with exercise prescription software PhysiTrack, making it easier for you to create and share customised exercise programs with your patients. With WriteUp, you can seamlessly manage patient records, appointments, and treatment plans all in one place, while also delivering top-notch exercise prescriptions for your clients. Using WriteUp saves you time, it reduces paperwork, and it lets you focus more on what you do best, helping your clients. To find out more, go to writeup.com. That's WRITEUPP.com. Now, let's get back to Kevin. Finally, before I let you go today, I just wanted to ask, how do you incorporate exercise into your own routine to look after your well-being? How do you do it?
Very poorly at the moment, but I managed to. I still managed to go running about twice a week. I did a half marathon this year, which was, I haven't done that for a while, and that was a good training goal.
Well done.
Thank you. And
Mm-hmm.
I find that if working in the Soma Space is quite a physical job, because we're always, putting plates on barbells and moving things around and helping people to do things. So there's quite a lot of activity in it. But I try to run at least twice a week, maybe do 1 or 2 strength sessions. Again, nothing too heavy, half an hour, 40 minutes. And I don't practice Tai Chi enough, but I'd love to do more of that. But I think that the simplest thing that anyone can do is go walking, like trying to, the old go for your mental health walk cliche. The thing is, it's a cliche because it's true and it works and it is very valuable. And simply to, we're at risk of spending our lives sitting down, and to move your body, that's perhaps the simplest way to do it. And after all, running is just walking, but a bit faster.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I got a couple of dogs, so that keeps me walking every day. So
Yeah.
it's an excuse. It's an excuse to get me out, and it does work, and it does really help me actually. And I can tell when I've not had a walk the effect it has on my mental state. When I've had a walk, my day seems to feel better than when I haven't. So I can absolutely agree with that. Yeah, it seems like a cliche, but it's true. So, where can our listeners follow you and find your work and find Soma Space online?
Yeah, so we're on Instagram, of course, where it's the soma.space, and our website is the same thing. It's www.thesoma.space. That's our only online presence at the moment, but there's lots of stuff on the on both on the gram and on the website about what we do and our sort of philosophy behind it, and the stuff that certainly the resources that we found that have been really, really helpful, and I think should be more widely known about. Some of the books we've been mentioning. And I mean, again, it comes back to this. We all have an awareness that exercise is a great thing to do. It has a special relevance for mental health, but the question is, how do you do it? And how do you encourage other people to do it when they may think that exercise isn't for them or whatever? And, let's say accessibilizing it. A lot of work has been done in this area, and I think the same thing applies to therapy. It seems that more and more people are opening up to the idea of working on themselves in a therapeutic way. And perhaps exercise is one channel to do that as well, or certainly combining the both, which is what we're trying to do.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was an absolute pleasure having you here, Kevin, so thank you.
My pleasure. Great to talk to you, Ellie.
And that's the end of today's episode. I just wanted to say a big thank you to Kevin. Remember to check out writeup.com for all of your practice's software solutions and to start your free 30-day trial. No payment details are required. Thanks for listening to the Healthy Practice podcast, brought to you by WriteUp. If you enjoyed it, please do subscribe and leave us a review. It helps more than you might think. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.